How do you know which energies to draw towards you? How do you know which energies to move away from? Welcome everyone to Time to Come Alive. I'm your host, Valerie Hope, and every week have a wonderful opportunity to bring to you conversation to allow you to become more conscious, more connected, and therefore more creative. Each week I feature a new person, and my personal playground, as my brother likes to call it, is this show where I have really great conversations with interesting people. And in just a moment, I'm going to introduce my guest to you. In the meantime, if you're not already subscribed, please go to www.timetocomealive.com and you'll get every episode in your inbox. Your other option is to right below here on YouTube is to subscribe, and you'll get notified anytime a new episode is posted. All right, make sure you go do that. Now, for my guests. So funny enough, every once in a while, I come across someone that says, hey, you should meet this person. You know, every once in a while, it's kind of like, okay, that's random. But in this particular occasion, I have a common friend, Raheem Safir. So shout out to you, Raheem. Recommended that I reach out to his friend, Dr. Froswa Booker-Drew. And I said, okay, fine. And Froswa, I think you and I had like a 30-minute scheduled call just to check in. And somehow it turned into like over an hour.
Yes.
And one of the things I so appreciated about our conversation was how uplifting you are, how selfishly very validating and affirming for some of the things that I was thinking about, but also how committed you are to being fully authentically yourself in all areas of life. Even when you're working in a corporate environment, which I know a lot of people, and I would imagine mostly women sometimes struggle with what that's like. So I was like, okay, we need to have a podcast to talk, because it was just so fascinating to have a conversation with you. Thank you so much for being with us here.
Thank you so much. I felt the exact same way. I was like, I didn't expect it to be a long conversation, but I was like, I like her. We click. So yes. So thank you for having me.
Oh, such a pleasure. What else should we know about you, Froswa?
You know, I enjoy writing, you know, so author and just trying to be a better human being. But we'll talk about all that stuff through our conversation.
Absolutely. So yes, author, you're VP of Community Affairs for the State Fair of Texas.
Yes.
So that's like on your official gig. But then for fun, what are some things that you do outside of that?
Work more. No, I mean, I'm trying to be like you when I grow up. So I'm doing the podcast and just started doing that couple of months ago, and that's been fun because, like you said, your brother said that's your playground. And that's what it's become for me. It's like I just love listening to people tell their stories. Yes. And so started that, and I'm a part of a giving circle, one of the first Black women giving circles in Texas. And so I'm co-founder of that, and that's been fun. And there's another group that I ended up co-founding. I didn't plan on it, and it just kind of morphed into this organization that's really looking at how we help Black communities during COVID and this current situation that we're in. So a lot of things go on outside of my regular job, which a lot goes on there too. So I stay busy, but I love it.
You know, I think it's so interesting that you say this, because I found that when I tell people some of the things that I'm doing outside of my career stuff, it doesn't look very different. Like I'm still meeting people, I'm learning new skills, I'm taking courses and all this stuff. So what is it that drives you to do the things that you're doing outside of your work, although it's quote unquote work?
You know, I think it's calling. I think when you really begin to understand purpose, that it becomes a part of who you are. And I don't think you can get away from it, to be very honest. There is almost like this sense of urgency that's in you to do these things, even though you recognize it takes a process, and that some of the things aren't going to happen overnight because you're planting seeds. But I think it is the calling that calls you. Yeah. And that compels you to continue being in these spaces and doing what you do. Because this is the thing, I will lie to myself and say, I'm not meeting with any more people. I'm done. I'm taking time off. People just da-da-da-da. And it's so funny. My family starts going 10, 9, 8. Yep, she's about to take a phone call, and I'm like, how did you know that? And they're like, you're wired that way. You can't do anything else but be who you are. And so I've just had to accept that it's going to show up not only in what I do, it's going to show up in every aspect of my life because it's just who I am. And I think it took me some time to get comfortable and knowing that it doesn't look like that for everyone. And that sometimes what people will do is they do this transference of, because I don't do it means that you shouldn't be doing that either. And all of us are called in very different ways.
Yes.
And I'll never forget when I was working for World Vision, my old boss, we were talking and she had, a number of children. I only have one at home. And I said, well, how do you travel and not deal with this thing as a woman of feeling like you're not there for your kids? And more importantly, how other people see you. And she made this comment and she goes, people put what they can't do and their limitations on you. And you have to be very careful about accepting that. So because other people make choices and choose not to do this, doesn't mean that you can't make a different choice and do those things and be effective and well. So don't take it personal when someone goes, well, why are you doing this in your professional life? And it looks like you're always doing that and you're always on, because they're using their own limitations to see what possibility looks like.
Ooh, yes. Oh, that's deep. And this is so interesting. I think what you said, the key word was when you're called, right? When there's a calling, it's not about doing stuff. It's just a way of being.
It is.
And that way of being attracts the opportunities, attracts the things that spark interest, attract the things that like you want to really commit and dive into head first. So when did you discover what that calling was? Like, what was that moment?
It's been a progression. I've always waited on God to give me this burning bush experience. And I was telling some friends about that recently. I was like, I'm wrestling with some things even now in terms of what future looks like. And I said, I need God to do this burning bush. And a friend of mine said, first of all, that was Moses's experience. That's not yours. Secondly, you would take off running if you saw a bush burning and it spoke to you. You might even assume that you're on drugs and hide, because just think about what that could mean in today's context. So that's not going to happen to you. So get over that and recognize that it's going to be a number of things in your context. And so I think for me, it's always been this love of people. And also being a person who always, like you, reading and taking courses and learning where resources are, it just became this natural affinity for me to be able to go, how do you connect people to solve problems? And so it's just always been something that I've done, but there wasn't a name for it. I often talk about in my work, there's this theory called asset-based community development that looks at how all these communities, no matter how poor they are, have these 5 different assets, and they've recently added stories to that. And it's individuals, local economy, institutions, open space, associations, and that everywhere has that. Well, I didn't have the terminology for that, but I was doing that. I was connecting people to these resources without even having the theory behind doing it. And I think for many of us, it is something that you do without really having this understanding or going to school and getting a degree in it. And I think for me, theory just kind of married the practical application of it. And I started to go, oh, this could be even bigger in the way that I show up and do this work. And so it's been a progression. It is something that it's still evolving. And I often tell young people, because I know, when I first started out, I was like, I want it done now. I want to save the world now. And there's certain things that have happened that have led me to believe that some things happen just through living. It doesn't matter how much education you may get, not to say that's not important, But some things happen as a process of just living and having interactions that provide wisdom, because there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. You can get knowledge reading books all day long, but wisdom is when it is the practical application of that stuff and the experiences that happen as a result. And some of that only comes through you living. And so it's been the progress of life for me, and the journey that has allowed me to figure out more about what calling looks like and how to plug into it.
Mm. So you clearly did not have a burning bush moment. Actually, it was
No,
recommended that you even look for one. Good.
I'm still looking for it. I'm sorry. I still kind of want, him to write on the wall and go, "It's me, God, Froswa," something, but I'm being silly.
So, but I want you to think about what are some of the things, like you said that you gain wisdom through, sometimes you just learn through the living. So
Yeah.
what are some of those moments that you can remember that you were like, that's one. Oh, that's another moment.
I remember I had, very few people know this, but I had enrolled for a master's program at SMU, and I wanted to go into theology and do liberation theology. And I ran because I listened to some people saying, "What are you going to do with that?" Because I didn't want to go into the pulpit, but I also felt that this theory was something that could really help communities. And I wanted to learn more, and I ran, went to Oklahoma City and went to grad school and something completely different. I'll never forget, I was sitting at my desk at World Vision, and I heard this little quiet inner voice that said, "You ran, but you're still doing it." And I was like, "Oh, wow." Even though I didn't go to school to do that, I was still doing this ministry of finding resources to help people's lives look better while they're here. And it may not have been in this ministry context of, I'm in a pulpit or something, or out in the middle of the street going, "Go, you need to do this." But it was my interactions with people and helping, people using the resources that, we had at World Vision, and helping communities build capacity with those resources. So people had access to products, that they had access to training. And it was in that moment that I went, wow, sometimes what we envision things to look like, it doesn't always go the way that we think it's going to go, but it turns out, and you're just sitting back going, wow, this whole time what I thought was insignificant was being used to build a foundation for who I am and where I am today.
Oh, so true. So true. I'm finding, after living many, many years and making a lot of, not even mistakes. I don't even call them mistakes, because I think they were all lessons. They were just,
Yes.
but a lot of it was in the beginning, I got to figure this out. I got to make this happen. Right? And I come from a long line of women who just made things happen. And so
Yes.
that's just kind of how things were supposed to go. And the longer I've lived, now I see, actually, I don't have to do a whole lot. I just have to be looking and talking to people, to the right people, right people. And so you said something that you're really committed to helping. You said connecting people, right? Connecting with people to solve problems, which I think that resonates so much with me, because I think part of it is ideas grow stronger when they're shared. It's one of the principles that I really connect to. And then the whole notion that we are here to fulfill on a purpose, but sometimes the purpose of whatever we're doing is not for us. We're also in places and in conversations or in situations that fulfill another person's purpose.
Yes.
Right. But that's still part of our purpose.
Yes.
So say more about what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, it's huge. Again, I'm not gonna get too deep about some of this, because I'll start getting scriptural with stuff. But I won't say all. People are given mantles, and mantles really are about geography. They are about its placement. So God gives you a mantle to be able to be in a certain place. You're born in a certain era. The places where you're born, your gender, your race, all of those things are uniquely designed for you to fulfill your purpose. And so had I been something different, it may not have shown up the way that it does for me. And so, people look at folks and go, "I want to do what they're doing." and not recognizing that the season that they were born in, the geography, we can learn from them, but you're not going to have the same experience because there is, for me, when I think about calling, is so spiritual. And so all of us are uniquely designed with all the things that have happened to us to be able to impact not only our own journey, because, you know, it's like we were talking earlier about, I'm often reminded when I look at Moses and God says to Moses, what's in your hand? That so often we are looking for things outside of us, and it's all the things that are part of who we are that's in our hand, that's part of that mantle piece. And so what happens as you're going along in the journey is that there are all these other experiences that you gain that build on where you grew up and build on your education, but you're also impacting other people along the way as you're learning, and you're helping them get closer to finding who they are. I think quite often we don't see ourselves as mirrors, because we often are reflecting to other people who they are or the possibility of what they could become. And I even mean that in a negative sense. So much of what we're seeing now, in my opinion, is a reflection of who many of us are, or what we could be. So when you see the kind of hatred that we're seeing in our world now, to me, it's a reflection of how many of us feel about ourselves. I mean, so there are people who are constantly trying to change, and not to say that you shouldn't want to be better and do better, but when it gets to a point where there's this self-hatred piece, that it is constantly this berating of yourself and putting yourself down, or you look at other people and you're constantly putting them down in this cancel culture. Someone makes a bad decision or comment. It's not to say that people shouldn't have consequences or shouldn't be called out for doing wrong, but to completely say to another human being, you are dismissed, you don't exist anymore. It is a response to what we're seeing is internal, and it's just being manifested externally. And I don't think people are paying attention to that, because love does something very different. So when I love me, I'm not worried about you doing well, because I'm so into trying to do me. And I want you to do well, because when you do well, then there's a benefit for me. But when I don't like me, then I don't like you, because you're a reflection of who I am. And I haven't been able to deal well with me. And that is what we are seeing is you know, there's a scripture about, in essence, I'm going to paraphrase it, about treating your neighbor as you treat yourself. Well, how do I treat my neighbor well when I don't treat myself well? I don't care about what I do. You know, I will allow things to come into my spirit, or I say things that are so horrible about other people. So if I feel like that about me, then I don't have any care about who you are as a human being. And so I think the deeper conversation that we're not having is, where is love in all of this? I mean, and not to look at, you know, it's not to say that we shouldn't deal with the hatred. That's a problem. But where has love gone? And I used to think that was so hokey. But as I've gotten older, I am starting to really understand that there is power that exists within love. Love doesn't mean that I overlook your wrongdoing. Love says I call you out on it. But love says I also recognize that there is a process for growth, because I had to have it. We want patience for ourselves, but we are so unwilling to give that to other people. And it's something I even have to wrestle with, where I will get so frustrated. And then I have to remember, you weren't always where you are, Froswa. So how dare you expect people to be in a certain place when it took you this number of years to figure some of those things out? We don't have patience for ourselves. So when we look at other people, I'm done with them. That's crazy. And it only leads to more destruction and damage when we do that to ourselves and to each other. It's crazy.
You know, one thing I really love what you said about how it starts within, right? You know, Whitney Houston had it right. The greatest love of all, right? It's loving ourselves. And what's interesting, I think, is I don't know if I'd ever mapped it that precisely, I think, as you just did. Whereas and love doesn't necessarily mean like the self-care, there's a commercial definition of love for
Yes.
oneself, which is, go get your mani-pedi, get your hair done for the ladies, guys, go to your man cave, play your video games, do your sports or whatever, right? So there's all these social definitions of what love might look like for self. But I also got from what you just shared that if I'm at peace with who I am and what I'm doing and how I'm living and my background and my environment, like all the things, or as many things, right, as I consider valuable, I can be at peace with yours too.
Yes.
There's nothing for me to prove. There's nothing for me to challenge. There's nothing for me I don't have to check anybody, right? Now, the ego will come up every once in a while. I'm like,
Sure.
wait a minute. And I can catch it a little bit faster. But I had an experience recently where I had a conversation with somebody that was completely on an opposite side of an issue than I was. And that my perception was that there was a lot of darkness in the ideology and the concepts that person was sharing. And I remember internally checking with myself going, does it matter to me? Like, does it matter to me as in, does it bother me that this person has this perspective and has had these life experiences? And I remember just checking, because a lot of the stuff I was just like, oh, yeah, no. And I was like, no, you know what? No, it doesn't matter to me. And I remember the only thing I said, look, I don't read what you read. I don't look at the things that you look at. But because some of that stuff that you're talking about is quite heavy, who are you talking to? You have people to help you carry that.
Right.
That's a lot. And that was my only concern, is like, are you good with what you're carrying? I don't need to carry it for you. I don't need to try to pull it from you. I don't need to try to push my stuff. But it was such a conscious moment in that conversation where I'm like, I feel pretty good about where I am. You good? Okay, excellent. Anyway, but I think that's where I feel the power of love can go. And you're right, it is a force. It's a tool as much as hatred is.
Yes.
We I think have to redefine what it looks like in action. And what it looks like is not tolerating. What it looks like is literally accepting, is literally forgiving, is literally like engaging. There are some really specific and explicit ways to express love that I think we miss. So that I'm really excited about what you're talking about there. I mean, I would be excited if you weren't talking about it either. So no judgment.
But you made me think about, the way we see it now is so surface.
Yeah.
So I was telling my mom recently, I saw this thing where, a group was saying, we're going to have a moment for self-care and we're going to do this. And I thought, wow, that's very interesting, because no judgment. But when you've got to find self-care with a group of strangers online, I'm more concerned about who are the people that are in your immediate network. And if you've got to go find that outside of what you have, then the bigger issue to me, and again, do use this, but where is your network and tribe to help you with processing that? And I think for so many people, social media has created this false sense of relationships. And so it's easy for me to feel affirmed, when people like my pictures and I go, oh, I must be special. And it's superficial and it's outside of me. And we get that confused in believing that that's the internal validation. And that becomes the plumb line. The barometric reading for us is looking for the external piece to confirm and say, I'm good and I'm okay. And again, everybody does what they do. And I just sit back and I observe. And I'm so concerned with how we are confusing what it really looks like to take care of ourselves. And what does it really mean to love yourself? Grooming is good. We want you to be clean. We want you to have pretty nails if that's what you choose. But there is another part of our bodies that we're not taking very good care of, and that's the heart and the spiritual matter of things. And so you can be the best dressed, most beautiful, well-read human being, and if your heart is sick, it's going to manifest in all these other ways, in the way that you connect to people, the way you see yourself, the way that you see the world. And I think sometimes we put such an emphasis on the external piece, and when the internal is good and clean, then what happens is going to look different. What comes out of that is going to look different. But it's like the expression they used to say about, you are what you eat. Trash in, trash out. So if you are going to feed yourself a diet of anger and hatred, and it's them and us and all of that, it's got to go somewhere. It's coming out.
Yeah.
So helping people understand, nothing wrong with the external fixing. You should want to look good, because that's saying I care about me. But there are other things that you also have to care about within yourself, and it's being able to pull away when necessary and saying, I'm not going to allow some of this other stuff that's toxic into my space. I'm going to be mindful of what I'm feeding myself, not just food wise, but spiritually. Because if you feast yourself on a diet of McDonald's for 30 days, proof has shown what that will do to you physically. It will kill you. Or anything that is not just them. It's a lot of other things that you can eat and ingest that is going to be destructive to your body. It is the same thing with what we choose to feed on in terms of our thinking and in terms of our heart space. And that means the people that you're around, that means the things that you allow yourself to read and watch on television. I used to love looking at a lot of reality shows, and I recognized that stuff was affecting me. So it was easy to get angry with people, because you'd see these women throwing glasses of water on each other. You make me sick, and you're like, oh, look at her, and you're getting excited. And it's like, wow, but is that really how people act in the real world? I mean, am I really going to be able to do my job and I get mad at somebody and throw some water in their face? Probably not. And so you see people watching that stuff and internalizing it and not even recognizing that they're feeding themselves that. And it's not to say that every once in a while I don't want a good entertainment show and watch some stuff that may not be the best, but I can't eat that all the time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. It's funny. I remember when I was young, maybe like 12, 13 years old, and the Friday the 13th, those movies, the horror movies. So Friday the 13th had come out, and I remember my cousins were visiting. We were stationed in Hawaii at the time, and they were all visiting. And so we watched it together, and it was like the thing to do back in the 80s, apparently, when they first came out. I couldn't sleep for like a week, 2 weeks. Every noise, every sound. And I remember after that one, they had like, Friday the 13th, 1 and 2 or 3 or whatever, right? And then they had the and then, Nightmare on Elm Street came out. So that was another kind of cult classic. And so again, my brothers and I, we watched that. And I just remember how horribly it affected my sense of peace. Like, even at that age, I was just a teenager. And I was like, why do people watch this willingly? What is it about gore? And I mean, I love a good medical drama. I don't mind blood. I don't mind somebody, like, oh, and I'll cringe. But the murder, the I don't even want to talk about it. But it's just, I remember very consciously making a decision when I was a teenager that just didn't feed the soul the way that I wanted it to. And in fact, it affected me so negatively that I just like, why would I do this willfully? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So I totally get what you're saying. What are some things that you've done to love yourself even more? How do you show self-love, self-care?
Doing purpose work. So it's the stuff that I do all the time. It feeds me. Yeah. So I enjoy being around people who are positive and inspiring. That feeds me. I find myself watching videos on YouTube that educate me and feed me, that talk about life. Every once in a while, and I'm not going to sit up here and say I'm perfect. I do that all the time. And there's, I'm chanting in my house and all of that's happening. No, every once in a while, I'm looking at Tamar Braxton and I want to see some of that, what's going on with her every once in a while. But I don't allow that to be the sole thing that I'm doing. I find that when I'm doing purpose work and I'm operating in the better self, then it allows me to be able to stay happy and peaceful and light. And so I am always trying to find ways to connect to purpose, because I think in that, that's where you start seeing sparks. It's real interesting that we don't pay attention to, if you were created by the creator, you are a creator. Not saying you are God, but you are in the image of God, and you are a creator. And so when we are creating things that are helpful and good, whether it's in our work, our personal lives, with our family, we're creating great memories. You are connecting, in my opinion, to the source of all of creation when you are being intentional about what you're creating that's good. Because when he finished, he said it was good. And I think that's the thing that we have to ask ourselves. When it is finished, what we're doing, can we really look at it and say it's good? Have other people been benefited? Have they been given life and doing life enriching things because of what we've done? And if we're not able to say that, then we got to turn around and go, well, who actually created it?
Yes, yes. Ooh, interesting. I think the litmus test, like what you're talking about, the litmus test is can we say it's good, right? Does it benefit other people? And then the other piece is there a sense of peace, inner peace,
Yes.
in the process and in the result? If
Yes.
there's still turmoil, if there's insecurity, if there's some fear, then we haven't hit it. No, we haven't gotten there yet. Keep working.
No.
But there's
And examine the source. I mean, and examine what it is. So is ego driving that? So consider the source. And not to say that, you can die completely. I mean, it is something that we're constantly wrestling with. Ego will show up. But you have to do what you said, is you have to have these moments of self-reflection. And I think part of purpose work is also reflection. And I think it is creating spaces where we take the time. And I usually ask my students, do you spend time at the end of your day reflecting on your day? Because if you don't, you're constantly doing and you're not being. And so every day I have to find the time before I go to bed to sit back and look over my day and process the things that triggered me, and start figuring out, why is that bothering me so much, and really wrestling with it. And some things, an answer may come, and some, it may be night 3 and 4 where I'm going, I still am trying to figure out why this is happening. But it's having the space to be aware of it. And I was working with a group on Monday night, and I said, I want you all to pay attention to your body, because so often it's easy to get caught up in your head. But when you're triggered, it shows up in certain parts of your body. So figure out, why is that happening? Before you even say a word, begin to start wrestling with, why are you uncomfortable? Why is this showing up like this? But if you don't create these spaces to reflect and pay attention, you'll be doing this all the time. And that's not where the learning happens. It's being quiet and stepping back and saying, I got to process this and begin to start thinking about why I'm doing what I'm doing. And is it getting me closer to fulfilling purpose?
What you're describing, I think, requires such a high level, and maybe not even high, but such a commitment to self-discipline, right? Because reaction is instinctive. That's like fight, flight, and it happens in
it's hard.
Very, very difficult. My meditation has helped slow me down. But I had an experience last week or was it this week? Maybe it was last week. I remember I'd had an appointment, but I had a plan to meet with a friend of mine, and he canceled the plan at the last minute. And I was like, it was like you're talking about, notice your reaction, shoulders got tight, my stomach got somehow it felt like, reflecting back on it now, like I put on some sort of armor.
Yes.
Like I went to protection mode, like, oh, okay. But the way it sounded was like, oh, that's fine, we're good. Okay, yeah, okay, I'm just gonna do this. And I was very flippant and at the same time, I'm just like, I'm so tense. And I'm just saying all this stuff. and it was fine. I didn't yell, no big drama. But what was fascinating is, like, literally after hanging up the call, I was like, why did I go there? And what would honor what do I need to address within myself? That was the first thing. And because I wanted to say some things and I wanted to like fix it. I wanted to make it right. But then I was like, well, hang on. No, I've learned enough to know that's the trick. That's a trick. I just need to be with me for a while. And to your point, what helped was I actually recorded a voice memo to myself, just telling on myself all the things that were happening in the moment. Like, Mallory, you said this and you did this and you felt like this. And where was that coming from? Like literally, I just, talking out loud to myself. I haven't played it back because I'm just like, I feel like
that's so cool you did that. I had something happen this week where someone said something to me, and I recognize that when people say things that hurt me, I shut down.
Yeah.
And it goes back to when I was a kid. And that's the thing, is tracing where this stuff comes from. And I had to go back and go, when I was a kid and adults would say things, I didn't feel like I had power quite often to say anything back because they were adults. And so you learned with your voice to kind of go in. And so for people I don't know, well, it's easy to want to go, well, no, you don't, you know what I mean? And you can do it because there's not the investment. But when it's somebody that you care about, the way that you show up is a bit different. And it's like, sometimes I'm going, okay, so why am I going back to being 12-year-old Froswa and shutting down? And why did that bother me? And so I had to really think about what was the trigger. And it wasn't necessarily what they said. It was a reminder of some things other people had done way back. Wow. And whenever that happens, I find myself showing up like where I'm like, well, I'm not saying anything because you obviously, and I took it to a whole nother level. And, but it is taking the time to sit back and go, why is that bothering me? Because in the past, it would have been, well, I'll tell you something because you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you and you're going to get it even worse. Bam. So I got a broken tooth from it, or I'm going to break your face, and so, but what does that solve? So all of us are walking around in pain and hurting, my tooth is gone. Your whole face is jacked up. What did that solve? I feel better because you hurting worse. I mean, and that's what we do. And so I had to stop and just go, yeah, that may not have been appropriate at that time, what was said, but I had to really begin to start looking at why was I responding the way to it that I did. And I don't think we create the spaces, and in the moment it's hard to do it, but it's taking the time to step back and go, okay, so why is this? Why did I feel this way? And what do I do? And sometimes the answer, this is what's crazy, is to do nothing. Sometimes you just have to sit back and learn from it and go, okay, that's the lesson. That was next time. That was it. It was just to give me awareness. And, it's so easy to be a person who likes to fix things and want to fix it. And I am learning more and more. There's certain experiences that I am having in my life right now that it's not even for me to fix. It's just to go, observation, mental note, duly noted. Okay, got it. I see it now.
Yeah,
it's on the record. I got it now.
That's so true. That's exactly, I think, the experience that I was describing. And yeah, to this point, I'm just like, no, there's nothing for me to do, to say, to do, is just to reflect, to learn. Noted. I think what it also showed me is that there's another facet. I thought I outgrown some things. I'm like, oh, that was not growth.
Yes, I'm stuck.
I gotta go to 2.0 now. Okay?
Yes. And for me, it was like, oh, okay, 12-year-old Froswa is alive and kicking. We gotta sit her down and get her a box of Frosted Flakes and let her, chill out a little bit because she is showing up. And recognizing that we bring all of that to who we are and how we show up. And I think it's so wrong to not expect other people to do the same thing. It's so unfair. People bring who they are to work. They bring all of that stuff. If they just got in a fight with, who they're living with and they've been cussed out, you think they're going to walk in and start wanting to hug and kiss on you? All of that. And some people can. But most people cannot separate themselves and compartmentalize who they are. It shows up. And so we have to be aware that we do that just like other people do it too.
Absolutely. So Francois, for you, when you're, so let's take it to the opposite side. So someone, we talked about how when, we're triggered and our reaction to it, but when other people come in and they're triggered by something we do or say, no matter how well intentioned it was, how do you manage that? What is your conversation either internally or with that person like?
I'm sorry. I have to say, really, I have to say to them, I'm sorry. Because sometimes we do things, and I have done it, where I have meant well, and the other person took it in a very different way. And in that moment, and this is a mistake I've learned from, in that moment, our first response is to defend and justify why we did what we did. And it's so easy to go, well, I didn't mean that. This is what I meant, because you want to be right. And I am learning more and more in my life that sometimes, more often than not, it is better to have peace than to be right. You can be right and have complete hell break out. You're right. Everybody around you is just still mad. And yet you have to look at the return on investment in every situation. I ask myself over and over again, a year from now, will this matter?
Yeah.
And most of the stuff that I find myself getting pissed off with a year from now will not even, I won't even remember it. Shoot, 6 months. And so I have to say to people, if I want to maintain relationship, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Tell me what I've done so that I am able to correct it. And that is a hard thing because it requires you to be vulnerable, and it requires you to admit that you weren't right. And that hurts. And I'm still learning that. I can't say I got it down because I want to be right sometimes. I want you to know that I got this. And I don't. And I think what has been the teacher of that for me is I have a daughter who is 20. And that relationship has taught me more and more now that my role with her is I am not a parent in the way that I was when she was 14. I'm a consultant and coach now. So the idea that I am going to tell her what to do when she's in her own apartment, yeah, I might be paying for a lot of her lifestyle. I still don't know what she does all the time. And the idea that I'm going to demand that, and my mother has been, it's interesting watching her coach both of us. And my mother will say to me, so you want to be right, but you're going to lose relationship. And so you need to be very mindful about that. That doesn't mean you don't express your concern or that you don't, say, hey, this could be a problem, but you've got to do it in a way that allows her the opportunity to be who she is and learn from it. And my mother says, you made mistakes at that age too, and you turned out okay. You have got to give her the space and the permission to figure this stuff out. And you can't tell her all along the way, you need to do this, you need to do this, because there are decisions that she makes that I'm going, well, when I was 20, I was doing this. And my mother's like, it's a different world. And you and her are not the same person. So give her the space, she'll figure it out. And if she doesn't, you've done what you needed to do. Did you do your best? Did you give her all that you could? Yes. So you have to sit back. And that relationship is teaching me how to even do that with other relationships when I want to be mama bear and come in and start saying, you should do this, you should do this, because I want the best for you. And I have to step back at times and say, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to overstep and come in. It was out of love, but I'm sorry. What do you need from me, and how do I do it better next time? And that's what I'm learning with her.
Ooh, what do you need from me, and how can I do it better next time? Oh, that's deep. That's beautiful. And I think if we were to offer that to more people,
it's hard. It's hard.
I'm trained as a coach, and so and my nature has always been to be pretty inquisitive, but I have been at times giving the feedback like, don't coach me. All right, I don't need you to coach me right now. Or they just tolerate whatever line of questioning I chose. But I've gotten better now by asking, okay, so how do you want me to listen to this? Some people just want to vent. Some people just want, maybe they do want an answer. Maybe I guess I need to think out loud. I'm like, all right, cool. But getting that instruction rather than going with my instinct or my skill, my gift or whatever it does take some humility, right?
It does.
Right. Whatever you need is right for you. I can't be the judge and and the arbiter of that. So.
And it's humbling. I mean, talk about being leveled, and you think because you've had all this certification and education and you're in these experiences and you're having to sit back and go, I didn't do that well. Oh, wow. And it's humbling. And yet, it reminds me often that life is a series of experiences where we're constantly learning. And sometimes you get this stuff right. And sometimes you get it right for that situation. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be applied to everything.
And I think the other piece I've also noticed is that people are here to teach. When you talked about how to apply people, connect people to the problem, I also think that for our own growth, that there are people who come into our life to point out some problem.
I've had a number of them lately where I'm just like, oh, go away. I go. Go talk to somebody else. I have asked some of them too, but it's important. I think, if all your relationships are one-sided, and I even see that with our relationship with God, if all our relationships are, people are coming asking you, give me this, give me this, give me this, you're going to feel used and not feel like you're in relationship. And I think that sometimes, our relationships with God also mirror quite often the way we treat and see people too, in my opinion. And so I'm even learning in that relationship, if I'm constantly just going, give me, I want you to fix this, do this, and it's not the talking and the listening and the learning, and allowing other people to be teachers, and that it's not going to always be good and fun and what I like, but it's still going to be something that can benefit me and be for my greater good. I am having to learn that if it looks like that in my relationship with God, it is going to look like that in my relationships with people too. And that if I want that one to be good, then I've got to go deeper. I've got to be willing to be open to criticism and seeing the good, bad, and ugly of myself. And I've got to be able to know that people are going to reflect that back on me too. And I can't go, I don't want to talk to you, guy, because you're not doing what I want. And so how do you do that with people? I don't want to talk to you because I want everybody to do what I want them to do. That's a miserable existence. It's just not going to happen.
It's not. One of the things that we talked about earlier was also this idea that when people come, and there's some people who you want to spend time with, or people who you think elevate, right, edify, and other people who are completely the opposite. Now, if what you're saying, right, it's that two things. One is that, if God is really the one driving the bus and sending people, how and what do you do to show love to people that you just like, I don't want that, or I don't need to be around this? How do you deal with that?
It's hard, and it's something, I will be honest, that I wrestle with, because I have a lot of people come at me and want to talk and you to help them and connect them, and it's hard. It's trying to have balance. And there are those who, like our relationship, that you immediately click with, and it's like, man, once a month we need to get together. And there are other people that are a little more difficult. And I think in those situations, one, I think you show love to people regardless. But I also have come to understand that everybody isn't necessarily meant for me. They may come, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I am responsible. And I think that's the thing when you're in these spaces, is being very careful of being responsible for everybody. You can't be.
What do you mean by being responsible?
That you have to take time with every single person that comes your way. There's only so much time in a day. And I would have said, if you had asked me this 5 years ago, I would have said, that is so mean and wrong. You have to be there for people when they need you to be there. And I have learned that yes, I can create spaces for people, but I only have so much time, and that everyone isn't necessarily meant for me. So you may interact with me, and then I can go, I know someone else who can really help you in this space even more than I can, and who can identify with you. So I have to be okay in knowing that everybody isn't necessarily meant for me at that time. People come in seasons and reasons. And some people can stay for lifetimes. And there are people that it may be 30 minutes that you hear what they need and you go, oh, that's all you need. And they go on and they're good. Or you go, I know someone else that can do it. So I think it's being very clear about what you can and can't do with people. And there are certain situations that people have come to me on. I can't handle it. I don't know what that's like. And I would be more detrimental to you in giving you advice on something that's just not my lane. So if someone comes in and starts asking me, I want you to help me build a house, I would be an idiot to say, well, I've lived in several, so I know how to build them. You know what? I know you should probably put some walls up and a roof. That's building a house. You idiot. And the first time it rains, this stuff is going to fall apart. So I can't assume because I've been in several houses that now I can build them. I have to know, and that's where purpose and knowing your purpose and being able to connect to that is when you understand where you are and your lane and being very comfortable in it, you know that you can love a lot of people, but you also love them enough to know that you may not necessarily be the one that I'm responsible for stewarding at this time. Somebody else is supposed to do that. And I just drop a seed and then connect you to, boom, whoever it is that can do that. But no, I know somebody comes in right now and says, you know what, we're going to cook for 1,000 people. Do you want me to kill them? Is that what my role is to come in and help kill people? You want me to do? If that's what the purpose is, you might have the right one. But if you wanted to taste good, you better go get somebody else. Now I can do small groups of people, but you want me to cook for that many? Something's not gonna get turned out right. Somebody might get sick and die. I'm your girl if that's what you want. But if you don't, you might go, Froswa, do you know someone? And I'll go, yeah, I got the perfect person who can cook for that amount. But I'd be a fool to sit up there and go, yeah, I can help you because I cook soup for 2. I know how to help you cook for 1,000. No, ma'am.
So we know not to ask you to build a house.
Not at all. Fix a car. None of that. Do not call me. You will be stranded on the side of the road doing this. Don't ask me. But that's where learning who you are and your gifts and your talents and your skills and being comfortable in who you are, then you are okay to look at people and go, I don't do that. But there is someone else who is equipped to do that. And I'm okay with saying no and allowing other people to shine.
Absolutely. I think that's part of the discernment, right? Because so many things come our way that we should do, you should know, you should learn, you should practice, you should be good at, depending on our generation, depending on our career path, depending on the school we went to, family. There's so many things. And I think to what you're saying is really about being able to get quiet enough to go, okay, what is my thing? And that's one of the reasons, my show's called Time to Come Alive, because of that Howard Thurman quote. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs are more people who have come alive.
Yes.
And it's not about obligation, and it's not about, what's right or what's wrong, what's good or what's bad. It's literally about we become experts in ourselves, right? Experts in ourselves and who we were created and built to become, and just get to work on that.
Yes.
Work on that. So I so appreciate that. Now, I don't want to lose sight of this, but as we wrap up, you have such a key role in your community and clearly in your role as VP of Community Affairs. That I would be remiss not to mention that the Texas State Fair is one of the largest state fairs in the country, and it's happening right now, which I've completely missed. I hadn't even thought about. So what can you share about what's happening with the State Fair of Texas?
So we are not doing it to the degree that we've done it before. It is a drive-through. And so you can go to bigtex.com and pay for either a 2-pack or 4-pack, and you get all this food. You can get fried Oreos and popcorn and cotton candy and corn dogs. It's so much stuff. and you get to take a picture with big text with this mask on. And so even though you're not experiencing the entire fair, this is our way of giving folks a taste of the fair. And while you're driving, you get to see so many things and read things about the work that we're doing, things like my department does. We do a number of convenings and trainings in the community, and we have a lot of signature programs. And so I tell people, even though the fair isn't going on, our engagement in the community has not stopped. We are still doing so many things, probably even more than when we were open because of Zoom. But it has been amazing to watch, even in the midst of a pandemic, that you can still be connected to people and you can still make things happen and really contribute to making your community better. And so I tell people that's an excuse when you go, well, I can't volunteer in person, but there are things that you still can do. And so I'm excited that I get to play a small role in being able to do some things to make things better for others who often, don't have resources or don't have a voice at the table, that I get to come in and do something to help.
Well, the cool news is that not only do you do that at the community level, but it sounds like through all the conversation we've had today that you do that at the micro level too, in your friendships and your relationships and your acquaintances and your workplace. So that's got to be really cool. I'm so happy, Froswa, that Raheem connected us. So thrilled that we had opportunity to play in this sandbox of mine. And I know next week I'll be in yours.
Yes, you'll be in mine. We're going to do it again.
Fantastic. I don't know what's going to come out of that conversation other than cool, fun, great stuff. So thank you so much for being on Time to Come Alive today.
Thank you for having me.
I'll make sure to put the big text, was it bigtext.com?
Yes.
I'll put that in the link so that people because Sunday is the last day, right?
Sunday is the last day of getting some Texas flavor. So come on out.
Good. And drive through fair. What more can you ask for in the middle of a pandemic? Awesome. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Time to Come Alive. Dr. Froswa, again, it's so nice to have you here. And everybody else, make sure to go ahead and subscribe, www.timetocomealive.com, so that you get this episode and many more in your inbox, or you can subscribe here on YouTube for notifications. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone.